First, I know, Mr. President, you will be taking the floor in a few minutes. I spoke about the bittersweet mood we all have of your departure. Bitter in the sense that you've done so much for the Senate, for Vermont, for America over the years that we will badly miss you. Sweet because you'll get to spend more time with Marcel, your children, your lovely grandchildren, and you deserve it after all these great years of service. It's one of the most extraordinary records any senator has compiled in the history of this country. So thank you for your service and your continued service through January of 2022. Now, on infrastructure. Yesterday, our country took a major step forward to prepare our economy for the challenges of the 21st century. As we all know, the American people have been told for years, that another infrastructure bill was coming, one infrastructure week after another. But after yesterday, we can now tell the American people that an infrastructure law is here. The President signed it yesterday. The enactment of bipartisan infrastructure legislation is so long overdue. There isn't a community in America that doesn't have some glaring need. Crumbling roads, dilapidated schools, untrustworthy bridges, overburdened airports, seaports, and railways. The new infrastructure law will tackle these challenges head on. And I thank the President and my colleagues from both sides of the aisle in making yesterday possible. The President's infrastructure bill can be summarized with a four-letter word, J-O-B-S. Jobs, jobs, jobs. More local jobs, more good-paying jobs, more union jobs. Unions, as we know, have been a ladder up through the decades, and they will continue to be under this bill, as there will be more of them. And the jobs will put people to work on projects in every state and every community. In New York, my state, dependent on good transportation, major undertakings like Gateway, the Cross Bronx Expressway, the 2nd Avenue Subway, I-81 in Syracuse, the North Inner Loop in Rochester. The list could go on and on and on. All of them will finally get going again. Have a great chance of that happening after years of paralysis. And the federal dollars that the government is sending to the states is already having an effect in my state. Yesterday, our governor announced that because of the federal dollars, there won't be fare increases or cutbacks in service on the MTA and the commuter rail. That is really good news. Well, what's happening in New York holds true in every other state in the nation. Major projects that have been long awaited have a real good possibility of getting going. So there's great news, and jobs, jobs, jobs will rain down on every state. So there's much to celebrate with yesterday's signing. And in the weeks and years and months and years to come, the American people will see the benefits with their own eyes. So I want to thank President Biden for finally delivering on something that previous administrations have tried to do but have been unable to complete. Build Back Better. Make no mistake, we will keep going in the weeks ahead by passing the rest of the President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. It's very simple. If we want to create more jobs, if we want to fight inflation, if we want to help families lower costs, the best thing we can do is pass Build Back Better. Let me repeat that. Want to fight inflation? Support Build Back Better. For all of 2021, we've seen a historic and unprecedented economic recovery compared to where we were at the depths of the COVID crisis. But there's no denying that as our recovery continues, we must work to address supply chain troubles that have exacerbated inflation in recent months. Build Back Better is exactly what the doctor ordered. No fewer than 17 Nobel Prize-winning economists and economists across the political spectrum have said repeatedly that Build Back Better and infrastructure together will reduce inflationary pressures. In just, I think it was this morning's Washington Post, Larry Summers, one of the inflation hawks in this country, recommended passing Build Back Better as a way to reduce inflation. The child care investments alone will save parents thousands of dollars a year. Right now, families pay an average of $10,000 annually on child care for each kid under 4. Many pay more than that. That's a back-breaking expense too many families, the majority, simply cannot afford. Well, Build Back Better will provide the largest investment in child care ever. Extending the child care tax credit will help parents save on things like diapers and groceries and gasoline. And of course, Build Back Better will finally empower Medicare to directly negotiate drug prices in Part B and Part D, lowering costs for millions of seniors and American families. On insulin alone, our plan would make it so that Americans with diabetes won't pay more than $35 a month for insulin. Mr. President, none of the things I'm talking about are luxuries. None are handouts. They're daily essentials that families need to thrive with and which over the years have grown expensive. And America is behind this. Every poll you see there for all of these things. Why will not a single Republican vote for it? Why will not a single Republican vote to reduce insulin costs to $35? Not a single Republican vote to help Americans with child care. Not a single Republican vote for the best way to reduce inflation, even though they talk about it a lot. It's profoundly disappointing to see our Republican colleagues more focused on exploiting problems faced by the American people. Just recently, my colleague, the junior senator from Florida, told Americans precisely how he feels about the rising costs, inflation costs faced by families. His quote, "It's a gold mine for us." It's a gold mine. That's what the Republican junior senator from Florida said. How cynical, how low, how wildly out of touch is that? The same Republicans who spent years under Donald Trump cutting taxes for the wealthy are now opposing relief for the middle class and cheering for costs to go up. I hope the American people remember that. Democrats are fighting to pass legislation to lower costs. Republicans, on the other hand, think inflation is, quote, a gold mine, unquote, for them and are rooting for prices to go up. These are the same partisan, short-sighted games that have frustrated American families who've increasingly wondered who in government is looking out for them. Well, yesterday, Americans got to see one shining example of what can happen when elected officials do look out for them. Build Back Better is another opportunity to do the same, and we will not let up until we pass Build Back Better and keep our promise to recapture that sunny American optimism that has long been the key to our success. And finally, on NDAA. Mr. President, last night I took the first procedural step for the Senate to begin consideration of our annual national defense bill. Republicans have repeatedly said this legislation is urgent and needs to be taken up immediately. We've heard them say that. They've signed letters about it. With their cooperation, the Senate can start voting as early as today. We're ready to do that, and I hope Republicans can join in moving this legislation forward quickly. This year, it's my hope and intention to add to the NDAA the bipartisan legislation the Senate passed earlier this year to boost American manufacturing, scientific research, and innovation, and U.S. competitiveness. The U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, USICA, formerly known as the Endless Frontier Act, which I championed with Senator Young, with great help from so many, among them Senator Cantwell. It would be one of the largest federal investments in science, technology, and manufacturing for decades. It's an urgent and necessary step that will put more Americans to work in every corner of the country. It'll fight inflation and relieve overburdened supply chains. Talking about supply chains? Pass USICA. Nothing will do more over the next few years to reduce supply chain problems than this bill, and especially in the semiconductor industry. The chip shortage is not some abstract issue. It's impacting the daily lives of Americans. Cars, refrigerators, and other household appliances require chips. Supply shortages means Americans are left waiting a long time for these essentials. We have legislation ready to go to fix this major chip crisis. Addressing this crisis cannot wait. A generation ago, we used to produce about a third of the world's chip supply. Now, fewer than 12% are made in America. while other countries have lapped us, particularly China. This hurts American workers, American consumers, American national security. We should pass USICA this year so we can, and it's a bipartisan bill, so we can strengthen domestic chip production and drive new investment in the industry to help address the shortage. If we can pass the defense bill with USICA language included, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to work with the Speaker and our House colleagues to find a way to get this legislation enacted before the year. And once again, before I yield the floor, my kudos, accolades, fondness, and love for the great senator from Vermont who will now speak.